Hi there, and welcome to another episode of How To with Herman, the place to get your project management tips to put you one step ahead of the rest. Now, if you're interested in learning more about project management, hit the subscribe button to get all of our short videos on different project techniques. Now, today's video is part one of a two-part series on creating a network diagram for your project. Now, in part one, we will look at the basics of setting up a network diagram. And in part two, we take a deeper dive into more complex techniques with regards to a network diagram. Okay, so let's get started. Now, once you have obtained the project requirements, created a scope statement for your project, and subdivided the project into a work breakdown structure and a dictionary, it is time to start sequencing what needs to happen in the project. The idea is to create a flow of work in the project that makes logical sense from the start to the finish, and that it reflects reality as close as possible. Now, why is that important? If your project plan is airy-fairy and bells and whistles, and has all the bells and whistles you can think of, it will most probably not work in real life. Now, the simple reason for this is that in real life there are constraints or obstacles that you need to take into consideration when planning your project, such as money, resources, risk, etc. Now, always try to ask the question, is what I'm busy doing logical? Will it work this way in real life? So why do we have a network diagram on a project? Everything that you do on a project, so that is all your activities and work packages, etc., is related to one another. In other words, there's a relationship or relationships between the different activities, and this needs to be established or figured out through a network diagram. Now, the idea is to ensure that a logical sequence of work is established in order to obtain the greatest efficiency within the project constraints, such as time and cost. This is also where the complexity of projects comes into play, because you need to figure out how the pieces of the puzzle fits into one another. Now, let's look at the different kinds of relationships between activities in a project. Okay, so let's look at the different kinds of relationships that you can find in a network diagram. Now, the first one is a finish to start relationships or relationship. Now, it basically works as follows. As you can see there on the screen, first of all, there is an activity of digging a hole, and then it's followed by an activity called plant a tree. And this arrow here in the middle indicates the relationship between the two. And you can't plant a tree if the hole has not been dug or finished being dug. So it is a finish to a start relationship. Okay. Now let's look at the second one, finish to finish relationship. Right. So finish to finish relationships work as follows. As you can see here on the example, writing the document is your predecessor activity, and then editing the document follows basically after that. But editing the document will never finish if writing the document isn't finished. So it's a finish to finish relationship. So once you finish with writing the document, the editing, which is basically after that or which follows it, can then also finish. So that's a finish to finish relationship. Right, the third one is a start to start relationship. Right, so there we can see pour the foundation is your predecessor, so that happens first, and then after that level concrete or leveling the concrete. So you pour the foundation first, so you need to start with that, then you can start to level. So while you are pouring the foundation, you can start leveling, and as you pour on, you can then level as the concrete as you go on. So these are the three kinds of relationships that you find most often in a project and in a network diagram. So your finish to start, finish to finish, and start to start relationship. Right, so now that you know what the different relationships are between the different work packages or activity, let's start putting a network diagram together. So the example that I'm going to use is a very simple example of a network diagram. And what I'm going to explain it against is making a cup of tea. And how do you put a network diagram together for that specific activity? So first off, what we do is remember now in your project, your scope statement is done, your work breakdown structure is done, your work packages is done or are done, and you have your dictionary done. Okay, so where you get the activities from for your network diagram, it normally comes directly from your work breakdown structure. So those are the work packages or activities in your project, and you utilize those and then you build a network diagram. And normally a network diagram is a flow of work, and it flows normally from the left hand side down to the right hand side, that you can see the logical sequence of the work in the project. So first off, we normally start with a triangle with an S inside that indicates the start of the project. So there's no predecessor activities or something that happens before this, because it is the start of the project. Then we add an arrow, and as I've explained before, the arrows indicate the relationship between the different tasks or activities or work packages. Now the first activity here that we are going to do, so what you see there in front of you, so we have the start of the project, then the arrow indicates this comes after the start, and the first activity is pour water in the kettle. And you will see we use a block for that. Sometimes you will see people use a circle as well, but for now we will go with the blocks. So that is our first activity that happens after the start of the project. Then there's another arrow that I'm going to put in, because that now leads to the second activity that we need to do. So firstly, we have pour water in the kettle, and then secondly, switch on the kettle. So you will see this is a finish to start relationship. So I need to pour water in, finish with that, then I can switch on the kettle. Right, so here the next activity is take a cup from the cupboard. Now you will see what I've done here. Taking the cup from the cupboard is not, or it happens at the same time as switching on the kettle, because the kettle will take a while to boil, let's say 5 minutes to boil the water. In that time I can start doing other activities as well. So these ones, the number 1 and number 2 here are sequential, where switching on the kettle and taking a cup from the cupboard is concurrent. They happen at the same time, because switching on the kettle is a mechanical exercise that goes on its own, and I can then do something else. So you can see the relationship here is a start to start relationship. Right, then there's another arrow, and then after I've taken a cup from the cupboard, I put in a tea bag in the cup. And you can see these two activities will take more or less the same time as switching on the kettle and boiling the water. Okay, so once that is done, then my project basically converges into the next activity, and that is pour the water in the cup. So once I've switched on the kettle, the water has boiled, I can pour it in a cup, and at the same time I've taken a cup from the cupboard, put a tea bag in, and now it's ready for the water to be poured into the cup. Once that is done, I add milk to it, I add sugar to it, and then it is ready to drink. So that is then the end of my project. So basically, this is how a network diagram works and how you can read the network diagram. So the idea is, in your project, once you've put together your network diagram, is to read through it and to see if it makes logical sense, the way that you set up your project. So if we look at this project that I've done here, does it make logical sense? Can you do it like this in real life or not? And if you can, then it's fine, then most probably your project is planned really well. But if you can't, then, and there's something not right, then you need to make some changes to the way that you put your project together. And this is what the network diagram will show to you, is that fundamental logic in your project. Is it there, the way that you've planned it? Can it happen like this in real life? Or do you need to change it due to the constraints that you work with in terms of time and scope and money and resources and those kind of things? Okay, and once you are satisfied that your network diagram is intact and it makes sense, then you can move on basically to the next thing that you need to do. So in order to do the network diagram, just to recap quickly, we normally start on the left hand side, work through to the right hand side. We have a start and a finish, and then you add all your different activities in the middle. You add your arrows, and your arrows then indicate the correct relationship between a successor and a predecessor. So predecessor happens before and a successor happens after. Yeah, and that's how you put a network diagram together. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you will be able to build your network diagram with confidence. In part 2, we'll take a deep dive into much more complex techniques in order to put network diagrams together for more medium to larger projects. Also check out our website for all our online PMP and project management courses. See you in the next video. Bye for now.